In late 1980, in response to fuel shortages and recessions, Ford released a brand new front-wheel drive compact car, one designed to beat the imports at their own game. The Escort. The Escort was Ford's new world car, as they called it, and had been co-developed with Ford's European division. Although by the time they made it to showrooms, as each had been heavily catered towards their individual markets, they shared very little in common aside from the powertrain. Now, next week's video will cover the North American Escort and its upscale Mercury counterpart, the Lynx. But this week, I want to look at another vehicle that resulted from the Escort platform, the Ford EXP. You've probably heard of the EXP, but in case you haven't, it was a sporty two-seater coupe built off the North American Escort platform, and Ford's first production two-seater since the original Thunderbird.
Look out, world.
Here comes Ford EXP.
Brand new two-seat, moving to the upbeat. You and me will leave the world behind us. Catch us if you find us.
Introducing
Now you might be wondering why. Why build a two-seater Escort?
You claim that because these three cars have rear seats, that they're four-passenger vehicles. Is that right?
Of course. 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Simple arithmetic tells me that makes 4.
But for what? For adults?
Ford's marketing research was indicating that there was a growing number of 1- and 2-person households, as well as plenty of young buyers who desired sporty cars but also wanted something efficient. And so the Ford EXP was born. Developed at Ford's St. Thomas Assembly Plant in Ontario, Canada, the Ford EXP and a Mercury version, the LN7, arrived for the 1982 model year. Let's take a closer look. But before we do me a favor and do make sure that you are subscribed, because almost 3/4 of you are not.
Well, that's just because 3/4 of the people who find your videos hate them.
Here comes new, here comes now, here comes Ford.
At first glance, from the outside at least, the 82 EXP and the 82 Escort don't look at all that related. From the back, the hatch gives it an almost Fox body-like look, but it's really the front end of the EXP that sets it apart from the Escort. The completely unique front end of the EXP doesn't have much of a grille, and the headlights sit in what some call eyebrow housings. Apparently though, many didn't like this front end and it was rather controversial. I don't mind it though for a 1982 car, and with a drag coefficient of 0.37, it was actually pretty aerodynamic.
That's better than cars like Corvette or even the Datsun 280ZX.
The 280ZX? Don't you mean 200SX?
280ZX.
It's the one and only Digo Double G.
The Mercury version, the LN7, sets itself apart with a few more grille slats, black tinted taillights, and a bubble back glass hatch, like the hatch you would find on a Mercury Capri starting in '83. Step inside the EXP and you'll really start to see the Escort poke through the disguise. The dash is an Escort dash, plain and simple. It's got the same strange vertically oriented climate controls the early Escorts used, the same steering wheel, the same clock, the same radio and cassette options, and it uses the same top trim Escort gauge cluster, which includes a tach and temperature gauge. One thing I really don't like about Fords of this era though is how they put the horn button in the turn signal stock. I mean, could there be a worse place for it? What is this, a French car? By the time you find the horn and activate it without turning on a blinker, that Mercedes SUV has already sideswiped you. Something you won't find in an Escort, however, is these two additional gauges down below the radio next to the cigarette lighter. An oil pressure gauge and an amp meter, giving it a complete complement of analog gauges. There are also lights for door ajar and low washer fluid. I guess since early Escorts didn't have lights for these in the gauge cluster, and they wanted to reuse the Escort cluster, they just had to shove the lights down here if they wanted to give them to the EXP. It was really the only place they could go without modifying the dash. So what's different about the Mercury interior? Well, really nothing. Now I did read that early 1982 LN7s had some wood grain in the dash, but the only 82 Mercury LN7 interior pictures I could find don't have wood grain. Maybe it was an option. It didn't mention it in the brochure that I could see, but who knows. So we've got a sporty little aerodynamic hatchback, but these didn't sell well. So what was the problem? Well, the engine was the same 1.6 hemispherical CVH engine from the Escort. Yes, it's technically a Hemi, but designed for efficiency and choked for emissions, the horsepower rating is just 70 for the 82 model.
Ha! You call that old thing a Hemi? This is a Hemi.
It came standard with a 4-speed transmission or an optional 3-speed auto, so while it might look the part, the performance just wasn't there, at least not at first. The EXP was actually about 200 pounds heavier than a 2-door Escort as well, so any kind of sporty feeling acceleration just didn't exist. The EXP was priced about $2,000 higher than a base Escort, and so it does come with more sound deadening and more standard features. This is why, despite being a 2-seater, it was heavier. Power brakes, the tachometer gauge cluster, full carpeting, a rear window defroster, the clock, the cargo light, many of these things were either optional or reserved for the upper trims on the Escort. Options included aluminum wheels, a pop-up sunroof, a premium stereo, cruise control, some different seat fabrics including leather, and even leather with shear lean. Yes, if you want, you can trim your EXP seats with a lamb. There are also a few two-toned paint options, a right side mirror, an electric hatch release, and a light group to give you a pivoting map light, as well as glove box, ashtray, and engine compartment lights, power steering, and air conditioning. Automatic models actually had a wide open throttle cutout switch for the AC compressor clutch, presumably so that its 0 to 60 time wouldn't have to be calculated in minutes. There is also a TR handling package you could get which gave you special metric sized wheels with Michelin TRX tires, a larger diameter front stabilizer bar, and stiffer tuned suspension for tighter handling. Good luck finding tires for those rims today. What about the Mercury options and features? Well, it's about the same. By the way, these option lists I got from FordEXP.com. If you really want to nerd out on EXPs and LN7s and read all the different options and specs for each year, well then this is the site to go to. It's not active anymore, but you can still access it through the Wayback Machine. I'll link it in the description. I got a lot of info from this site, so big shout out to whoever maintained it back in the day. Another thing you might come across in your travels, should you be Googling Ford EXPs, is some print material with EXPs that look like this. No blue Ford oval logo and no grille, instead there's slats on the hood. I believe these are early pre-production models, none of them actually made it to sale looking like this as far as I know, but if you see EXPs that look like this in old print material, that's what's going on. Sometime in 1982, I think early in the year, remember these went on sale in mid-1981, Ford offered a 4.05 to 1 final drive ratio for better performance as a no-cost option, and in March of 1982, a high-output version of the CVH engine became available. Thanks to a higher compression ratio, a dual snorkel air intake, a higher lift camshaft, improved exhaust manifold, and a larger secondary venturi in the carburetor, horsepower was increased to 80. This engine was optional for 1982.5, and by 1983, unless you were buying a base EXP, this was the usual engine they were equipped with. And high-output engines also generally came paired with a new 5-speed manual. In late 1982, Ford worked with Bosch to develop a multi-port fuel-injected version of the 1.6-liter, giving it 88 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque. Starting in 1983, this was the top trim engine, only available on the top GT EXP or GS LN7, and even then it wasn't available in high elevation areas because it couldn't be combined with the high elevation emissions equipment. There were a few different trim levels starting in 83, the base hatch with the base engine, the high output version which primarily gives you the high output engine and the 5-speed, but also adds some more features like a cargo cover, the rear window defroster which wasn't base model standard anymore, dual visor vanity mirrors, the electric tailgate release, and intermittent wipers. The next step up is the high output Sport Coupe, and now you're getting cloth seats instead of vinyl, a passenger side mirror, tinted glass, and even power steering. Above that is the luxury coupe. Now you've got an FM radio with stereo sound, 4-way driver's seat adjustments, and styled steelies. The top trim GT coupe provides the fuel-injected engine in most areas, your choice of a cassette or 8-track stereo, aluminum wheels, and cruise control. Mercury trims for 82 are very similar, although there are only 4 of them: the base hatch, RS Coupe, Sport Coupe, and Grand Sport or GS. A shift light was added as a new option for 83, available to any of the trims. It wasn't like a Redline performance optimizing shift light, but an optimum efficiency shift light. Remember, this is still the Escort, and it's still the early 80s. Also, all models got a larger 13-gallon fuel tank in '83, up from 11.2 gallons the previous year. The high output engine did help the EXP sales slightly, but it didn't do much for the LN7. The Mercury LN7 was really struggling, barely selling at all. I mean, honestly, what was even the point of making a Mercury version of this? As such, the LN7 was discontinued after the '83 model year, with the total number of Mercury LN7s sold in America over its 2-year run under 40,000. Realizing further improvements were needed to prevent the EXP from ultimately suffering the same fate as the LN7, Ford's Special Vehicle Operations Unit, the group responsible for the Turbo SVO Mustang and the Thunderbird Turbo Coupe, developed a new top trim for the EXP, the Turbo Coupe. Like the name suggests, this came with a turbocharged version of the 1.6-liter with fuel injection, and this brought a significant power increase to 120 horsepower and 120 pound-feet of torque. To counteract torque steer that may have resulted from all that extra power, Ford installed shorter, stiffer front springs, which also dropped the ride height by about 3/4 of an inch. All turbo models got an upgraded handling suspension package, and these special aluminum wheels with the Michelin TRX tires. The extra power of the turbo model really made a difference. Finally, the EXP actually felt a little like a sports car and can reach 0 to 60 in single-digit time. Turbo models also got a lip spoiler and a front air dam. Trim levels were slimmed to just 3 for 1984, with the Turbo Coupe at the top, the Luxury Coupe serving as the mid-trim level, and an unnamed base model at the bottom. Both of the lower trims now came with the regular high-output engine. There were a number of other updates done to the EXP as well for '84. It was essentially its refresh year. The EXP now had tinted taillights and the bubble back glass that was previously used on the LN7. I wonder if the Mercury sold so far below expectations that they were left with too many unused LN7 parts, and so they just decided to throw them on the EXP. The interior is the biggest change, however, as the EXP, along with the Escort, gets a completely new interior and dash for '84. Gauge cluster aside, which now has red font on the EXP Turbo, just about everything about this interior is new. The EXP now gets the same graphic display with LED lights for low fuel, brake, tail lights, low washer fluid, and headlights as the Escort, but it goes down near the center console where the amp meter and oil pressure gauges used to go. Much to John Davis's dismay, Ford decided that EXP owners didn't need those gauges anymore.
The only real disappointment inside the EXP Turbo is the absence of a full instrument package. No voltage meter, oil pressure, or boost gauges can be found anywhere.
The clock and timer are still around, but they're now up on the roof. This new dash is a lot more modern looking, and I think it's a big improvement overall, both in this car and in the Escort. Turbo models come with a new sporty 3-spoke steering wheel, while other trims come with this more standard mid-80s Ford steering wheel, but thankfully both of them now have a normal horn button. Cloth bucket seats were now standard, and discontinued options were the leather shearling seats, the mono radio, and the 8-track. The 1985 model year came without any significant changes, and while the Escort was continuing to sell very well, the EXP just wasn't. And so '85 was planned to be the EXP's final model year. Meanwhile though, a redesigned, more modern front fascia with flush headlights was given to the Escort and the Lynx as a 1985.5 update. Now apparently, legend has it that a group of factory workers who built EXPs, which by '85 production had moved from the Ontario plant to several US plants, so I'm not sure which plant this allegedly occurred at, but anyway, they were, I suppose, sad to see the EXP go away, or maybe they just thought they could design a better EXP than the idiots higher up, so they took an EXP off the production line and bolted a refreshed Escort front fascia onto it. It would have been pretty easy to do, despite the 1985.5 Escort looking radically different. It's still a first-gen Escort, still on the same platform as the EXP. I guess people around the plant thought it was cool, and it was eventually shown to Ford President Donald Peterson, who apparently liked the look of it, but I'm sure he especially liked the idea of how cheaply this updated EXP could be made, given that it could now share even more components with the Escort. So the EXP returned for the '86 model year, now called the Escort EXP, pretty much just an '85 EXP with the new Escort front end, although for production the EXP did get its own single slat grille different from the Escorts, and it did get unique front and rear bumpers from the Escort as well. Inside there's another new steering wheel and a few other small tweaks, bringing the interior in line with the 1985.5 Escort interior. The new Escort EXP came in just 2 trims now, the base called the Luxury Coupe and the higher trim called the Sport Coupe. The Luxury Coupe came with the new 1.9-liter carbureted CVH 2.0H engine shared with most Escort models rated at 86 horsepower. The Sport Coupe got a fuel-injected version rated at 108 horsepower. There unfortunately was no more turbo engine offered. At this point, you might be wondering, who would buy this over an Escort GT? And the answer is, not very many people did. Over the base, the Sport Coupe came with standard fog lights, dual electric mirrors, power steering, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, the center console graphic display, upgraded bucket seats, visor vanity mirrors, the handling package, and 15-inch alloy wheels. A convenience option group adds a cargo cover, an illuminated passenger vanity mirror, cruise control, and a tilt steering wheel to the Sport Coupe, or cruise control, the tilt steering wheel, power steering, and dual electric mirrors to the luxury coupe. AC and the rear defroster is optional to both models as part of the climate control group, and a sun and sound group adds a pop-up sunroof, a cassette stereo, and a premium sound system to both models, plus the graphic display to the base. Yeah, I know the rear defroster was standard before, but it's 1986 now. The free ride is over. You want an option, you gotta pay for it, otherwise don't buy it. No one is buying this car. Oh right, I think at this point they were just making the Escort EXP as cheap as possible. I mean, it wasn't selling well, and probably the only reason it was still alive was because it could be constructed mostly from Escort parts, which on the other hand, as we'll be discussing next week, was actually selling very well. For 1987, the regular Escort engines are updated. As such, the Escort EXP Luxury Coupe continues to use the basic Escort engine, which is now throttle body fuel injected and rated at 90 horsepower. The Sport Coupe continues to use the high output multi-point fuel injected engine shared with the Escort GT, still at 108 horsepower. The Escort EXP is officially considered part of the Escort line now, and it even shares the same sales brochure. 1988 would be the final model year for the EXP, and for the Sport Coupe, it was only a half model year. 1988.5 brought another refresh to the Escort, and surprisingly they did do the refresh to the EXP too, but only to the Luxury Coupe. The Sport Coupe was discontinued at that point. In a further move of cost cutting, the Luxury Coupe EXP was no longer worthy of a unique front fascia, and so it literally just got the new Escort GT front end this time, no unique grille or anything. It doesn't get the Escort GT engine though, continuing to use the 90 horsepower throttle body fuel injected from regular Escorts. I really don't know who would buy this over an Escort GT at this point. This final half year would be the end of the EXP, and it was discontinued for 1989, as there really wasn't room for it in the lineup anymore. 1989 was the model year the Ford Probe was released, and if you watched my recent Ford Probe Mazda MX-6 video, you know the front wheel drive Probe was originally destined to be the Mustang replacement, but outcry from Mustang fans set Ford straight. Too heavily invested in the Probe platform and under a production contract with Mazda, they still released the car but as its own model, the Probe. But there was no room in the market for Ford to be selling 3 front-wheel drive sport hatches, so the weakest link was cut. The Escort EXP. I mean, personally, if they weren't going to significantly increase the performance of it over the Escort GT, I don't really see the point of it at all after 1985. But let me know what you think.
EXP, an exciting sales and earnings opportunity. Take full advantage of it by selling this car the way it deserves to be sold, from introduction day on.